Welcome to the Get Hired podcast with Nicky Bulmer and Misty Combs. Every episode is an opportunity to learn better resume and interviewing skills with these HR experts as they review the resume of a job searcher and conduct a practice interview with them. They give real feedback that everyone can learn from. This is a post-status production in partnership with Liquid Web, sponsored by OmniSend.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us at our second Get Hired podcast, where you can write in to have your resume reviewed and practice interviewing with real hiring people and get real-time feedback. So if you think that this is something you might want to participate in, we can put the link up at the end here for you to sign up and join us on our podcast. But today we have Tatiane joining us. She is a aspiring and also current WordPress developer with a good amount of experience. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I will go ahead and dive into just a sample of what it might be like to interview with us for a WordPress development role. And then I'll go ahead and do the resume review after that. And that way you don't have to think about any critiques and stuff that we had on your resume while you're doing the interview. I don't want it to be distracting for you. Tell me a little bit about yourself and about your career path and about, why you're here with us today.
Well, I started tinkering with WordPress back in 2006 when I started my own first blog. And then I started to create a template of my own, and that's where I started in WordPress. And then some years later, I was already working with commercial themes, customizing them and creating custom themes from scratch. So various different things and customizing plugins, creating custom plugins for different purposes.
Nice. What is your favorite plugin that you've worked with so far or built from scratch?
Well, I built one for calendar management. It was for a startup I worked. They needed something very specific. I remember back then I reviewed existing plugins because we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? So there's so many great plugins out there. But then
I'm going to throw out a plug for the events calendar plugin as well right now. Sorry, please continue.
Oh, no, it's all right. But they had training sessions, and there were some specific needs at the time. Then discussing with the team, we arrived at the conclusion that it would be a better fit to create a custom plugin. And then I had the chance to work with creating custom SQL queries. WordPress has a lot of nice functions and methods that allows us to interact with the database, but there was some specific needs, some queries to, I created tables in WordPress database, so to join stuff and select things with different criteria. So it was very nice, very, very interesting.
Nice. How do you handle when you're working on a plugin? You're working with people who aren't necessarily very technical themselves. How do you handle receiving feedback from those non-technical clients or non-technical team members and get that implemented?
Well, I always try to remember that there are so many other things that I am in comparison not proficient. Like I'm very proficient in WordPress, so many other things I'm not proficient, so I try to remember what's it like when I try to give feedback on something to someone who's got more technical expertise on the something I'm giving feedback. So I try to always put myself in the place of the person giving me feedback to try to understand their point of view and try to understand where they are coming from in order to, as a WordPress developer, to build on that, to deliver a better experience.
What if the person you are working with is just exceptionally angry and their feedback comes across very negatively? How do you work through that?
Oh, wow. Then I will probably need to step back, gather my thoughts, my feelings, think through it, because it looks like a very complicated scenario. And working remotely, it has advantages because it gives us this time to think and to go through different points and to craft a more elaborate response than we would in if we would have to reply promptly. So I think I would start from there.
Walk me through your process when you start to create a plugin from conception to completion. What does that process look like? And you can just give me the high level overview. You don't have to get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay, first, what does this plugin need to accomplish? I'm okay. Then we have arrived at the conclusion that we need to build a custom plugin. We have studied what's out there. So from that point, what this plugin needs to accomplish, then what do we need? What we need in terms of the user interaction to build based on that, I think. Both on the admin side and on the front end. What is this plugin going to do on these fronts in order to determine what to build next, I think.
What what's most exciting to you about working with WordPress? And I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce Michelle. Michelle's here with us instead of Misty today. I'm so new at podcasting. I'm
It's all good.
I'm very bad at it. Um, but I know that you have worked with Michelle in the past. What about working with WordPress is exciting to you? What keeps bringing you back to the industry?
Oh, I love the flexibility to create so many different things inside this software, and it's always amazing the community, how the when we need something, either need help or it's a great and community. I love that about WordPress, and I love to work with PHP and WordPress.
Where's your favorite source to go to if you get stuck on something? You mentioned how great the community is. Where do you look first when you need feedback from the community?
I think I would start at the documentation because it's really well documented, um, and then expanding to searching the web, searching forums. I think these are my most common starting points.
You don't have like a favorite forums that you use or a chat group or a specific blog that, you find a lot of answers at.
Oh, I usually find several different sources on search tools.
Are there any tools or processes that you find to be exceptionally helpful for bringing together a distributed team?
Oh, well, I have been. Do you mean software tools?
Software tools, it can be anything that you use to communicate and collaborate working remotely.
Yeah, I have been working with teams that use Microsoft Teams, teams that have used Slack. These are the two most recent. Yeah, because what I believe is most important is to build a collaborative, cohesive team the tools will be important, but you can swap the tools. You have different features in each one, but the more important component here, I believe, is the team, the cooperation within the team.
Um, let's say I came to you with just a busted WordPress site, like slow to load, 400 plugins, like just a mess. What are the steps that you would take to optimize my site?
Oh wow. Um, I would take a look at the plugins to I would probably start reviewing what they are doing and trying to, if possible, to reduce the number of active plugins and testing testing the impact in order to, oh, if I disable the plugin and it doesn't seem to be having a greater impact, then can we move on and remove that? Because I believe it's always better to not have like a lot of plugins, even if they are disabled. Like we can favorite our plugins on WordPress.org, so we don't need to have them on our websites just because we love them. From
Anything
there,
else? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I would review the theme. Is that a child theme? How has that been implemented? Uh, how images are handled? How the JavaScript is handled? I think I would start. There are so many things. I think I would start there.
Do you typically prefer working alone or do you like working with a distributed team?
I in my most recent experience with WordPress, it was with an agency. I worked alone in the sense that I was the only developer responsible for the tasks I was working. It was support for WordPress sites, but there was two other developers, and we interacted very. We interacted a lot on chat tools to exchange information, to solve questions, to uh, share progress.
Have you ever
I
done like, go ahead.
So I was going to ask, along the lines of working remotely, in our world that, especially within the WordPress world right now, we have people from teams all over the world. So how do you handle sometimes the time zone, conflicts that we might have? So if there's a meeting that is, in the middle of your night, but you're required to be there, how does that impact you? How amenable are you to flexing your schedule around some of those needs of working on a remote team?
I have recently worked. I'm in Brazil, so I have worked with teams on the on US, on the East Coast. Uh, I There was another project where some members were on the Pacific Coast. Uh, that's as far as I have needed to manage time zones until now. But I believe that being able to organize and schedule ahead, oh, like if a team member would be in Europe or in Asia, that we can I believe I would work through that in order to, oh, if I need to be on a meeting that's like at night on my time zone, then we organize as teams. We self-organize. Okay, I will have this hour out of my usual time, but then we compensate. Like, oh, I start later or I end earlier my day because there was that 1 hour that I was available.
Excellent.
Um, that is all the questions I had prepared. Michelle, do you have any additional questions you want to add in here?
So what is making you want to change, positions or go from freelancing to working within a company? What's inspiring your change at this point in your career?
Oh, I have worked with WordPress before in company projects. I I think it brings more sense of more stability.
Hmm. Yeah. And do you have a space within your home or an office space that you have dedicated for you to be able to focus on your work time?
Ah, yes, I work from my living room. So here to my left side is my second monitor. When I open camera, I shift a small table here, so my bookshelf is behind me. But usually I work over there because there's a bigger screen there. I work with two screens, the
Yeah,
laptop screen and the other
yeah,
monitor.
yeah. I may have that same setup.
I just blur mine. I'm in my basement.
Excellent. So what kinds of questions would you have for us if this was a real interview and we were hiring for a WordPress developer? What kinds of questions would you have for us as the people who are doing the hiring?
Okay, I would have made my homework researching about the company.
Sure.
I am very interested about how is the culture, how are the teams self-organized in this sense, like what are the time zone differences we are going to work with, and how does the team organizes on this topic. um, what about, let's see, I am really I'd be really interested in diving into each company's culture,
Mhm.
like how what and oh yeah, something else occurred to me. Um, what they believe are the key steps. Let's say I'm hired. What do you think are the key steps for me to move forward, to deliver value, to integrate, to successfully integrate with the company, with the culture, with your team?
That's a good
Those are great
question.
questions.
Mhm.
Those are really great questions.
One of the questions
Yeah.
I like to ask when I'm interviewing somebody is, what do you want to tell me about yourself and your work style that I haven't asked you yet? Is there something that you wish you could convey to us?
Oh yeah, I'm usually a like 9 to 5 person, so I'm happy to organize around, if we are going to organize the team around different time zones. I'm happy to organize myself, uh, coordinate with the team around what does the team need. But I'm usually okay. I'm very constant in that point. I start at that time, I usually end at that time. If I have any different need, we will coordinate. But because as a as a Dungeons and Dragons dungeon master, I need to prepare sessions. I need to do several different things.
So that to me
So,
sounds like you set healthy boundaries and you have extracurricular activities that also fulfill your life, which I think is a healthy sign when you're hiring somebody for sure. I'm sorry, Nikki, I
yeah.
interrupted you.
No, you're fine. One of the things that we do here at Liquid Web um, is called the D&D Lunch and Learn, where we invited the entire company that wanted to play to join us for an hour once every 2 weeks and play Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh,
Um,
that's so nice.
we had so much interest in it. I have to run 4 separate groups so that everybody can fit in and actually play. And I love that we have the C-level executive is playing one of them. We have facilities folks playing, support techs, developers, sales, marketing, affiliates, like people from all walks of the company. And I love D&D because it brings all of that together. and puts everybody on a level playing field. And I'm going to do a shout out to Rhonda Capone, who is our chief of staff. She plays in one of our D&D groups, and she doesn't know anything about D&D, but she knows everything about teamwork. And I love the dynamic that, the different levels of experience have brought to the table because, that was a group of murder hobos, and she's got them like talking to rats and convincing them to like befriend the rats and
Oh, nice.
That's fun. That is fun.
but if I were you, just kind of jumping ahead a little bit and giving a piece of resume feedback, put some of that on your resume as an extracurricular, because being a game master shows incredible organization. It
Mm.
shows teamwork. It shows, a fortitude to bring a bunch of murder hobos
Yeah.
together and shuffle them through an adventure. And it's something that, you can bond with potentially your interviewer about, as you mentioned D&D, and I'm like, all right, let's talk about D&D. Let's go. And
Yeah,
that,
we
yeah.
I can nerd out about D&D all day.
Yeah, yeah, same. But
And
then
my eyes would glaze over, so
but if you can find that thing that gives you, that superficial bond with your interviewer, everything that you say is going to be seen in another light just because, we all have those unconscious biases where, if we like the person, we're going to like their answers more. I mean,
right.
we try to avoid them entirely. But if it's something that you
We're
can,
humans. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah,
if
exactly.
it's something that you can tie into the culture of the company and stuff too, I think that's great. And it showcases a really important skill set. So it's not just a superficial, bonding experience. It's learning about you as a person too.
Yeah, and
That's
as
very true.
DMs, I have already learned that in practical moments, we need to be prepared. Like I have prepared a session, I have prepared a bunch of things my players might be interested, but they might not be interested in any of that at all, and I have to come
Mm-hmm.
with something based on what the story they are telling with me at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows flexibility and
Hmm.
all sorts of interesting things for work, right? Yeah, I loved
Yes.
your idea. I loved your
Yeah.
suggestion.
Now, some of the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
I know, I'm sorry, some of the things I know about you because I've been working through WP Includes Me with you there, is that you're also into acting and learning acting. And I would guess with that comes improv. And then also that you are a fledgling podcaster yourself. And those are things that I think would also be good to add in that section because the ability to improv means that you can think fast and talk to people easily and quickly because your brain can adjust fast like that. And also the podcasting, it takes a different kind of discipline and a different kind of ability to put yourself out there to be able to do that. So I think that those would also be good things to include.
Yeah, I'll here with you. I'll be vulnerable to an extent and share that I haven't yet added that to my resume out of some level of fear that would be seen. Okay, but is she really going to work as much as we need?
Oh,
Because there's in practice sometimes, not every company, not every team, but sometimes it feels like companies want us to work a little bit more, going after hours and
mm.
stuff. And I was like, okay, if I add all of that, will that instead talk against me, make a case against me?
And it may, but let me ask you this. Do you want to work for that company that doesn't want to give you your free time to pursue your extracurriculars, your hobbies, the things
Same.
that you love in life?
I was about to ask the same question.
All right, I see the point. I
That's not a
add
good
what
culture,
I
right?
like,
Yeah,
and it will filter out the ones who wouldn't give me that kind of flexibility
hmm
that I love so much and that I need.
exactly.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, and when you
Yeah.
talked about having a day where you start at 9 and you end at 5 every day, and you can be flexible, but then you want that time back in another part, I think you said that very well. sometimes people say that and it sounds like I don't want to work any extra, and it comes across like that's fine. You're allowed to not want to work any extra. We're not paying overtime. We're not doing those things. You just have to say it the way you did, though, with like healthy boundaries as opposed to imposing negativity into it. So I thought that was really good the way that you said that is also. So
I agree because as an interviewer, when you said I'm a 9 to 5 person, I immediately went, because there's so much collaboration outside of that. But when you went on to talk about how you would flex your schedule and how, you are willing to be flexible and make up those hours here or there, totally washed away that
yeah.
feeling. So that was
Yeah,
a good progression.
right after I said 9 to 5, I had that thingy like, okay, that's something I'm sharing here with you. I'm being vulnerable here with you because I would most likely not have phrased it like that in an actual interview
Sure.
Mhm.
because of what you're mentioning. I would have put it in a way to to start off emphasizing availability to accommodate different needs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and but
Yep.
I think that you handled it well here, even being vulnerable, because like you explained it, you talked it through, and
Mm-hmm.
again, if somebody's not willing to work with your schedule and give you a good work-life balance, then you don't want to work with them, You're interviewing a company as much as that company is interviewing you, and it's important that that match is good because it's a waste of both sides' time, money, effort.
Mm-hmm.
And if the company's hiring somebody that is eventually not going to be a good fit, just for even if it's just culture reasons, it's something like $80,000 is the cost of a bad hire
Yeah.
for the
That's
pay
a
that
lot.
you pay, yeah, training time, materials, everything, yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
just a rough average, but
The one way you could have said that differently rather than the 9 to 5, which causes that, is you could say, I like to establish set working hours, and so that my schedule is predictable with the ability to flex my time as needed.
Noted. I will definitely do that.
Yeah. Because that says to me you have set healthy boundaries, you have an expectation of when you start and stop, but you haven't told me specific hours that may or may not work for me. If I was like in a different time zone and I wanted you to work 10 to 6 instead of 9 to 5, are you able to do that when kind of thing. So I mean, might be just a little bit gentler way of saying it.
Sure. Yeah,
yeah, just avoid that initial
exactly. You're totally right.
the
Thank you.
the scary thing about interviews, because as much as somebody could get really excited about like D&D or acting or whatever your experience in general, it only takes one thing to have them go ooh, and then the tone is set the other direction. It's such a fickle process,
Hmm,
and so much of it is the personalities of the people involved and the interviewer's willingness to understand that everybody is different and you don't have to like them for them to do a good job,
true.
but not everybody's willing to introspect in that way.
Hmm. Yeah, very true. Um, yeah, so I want to try to keep this to the right amount of time, because people start to tune out after a little while if a podcast gets too long. So let's flip over to looking at your resume then. And I've already reviewed it in advance, and we made some changes before Nikki even saw it. But from an HR perspective, I'm very curious to see what Nikki has to say.
All right, I'm going to go over the strengths of the that I saw first. The format was super easy to read. I was able to glance through it and see what I wanted to see. So nice, clear format. Um, I might highlight a little bit. Hang on, let me back up 'cause I'm still on strengths. Um, you did highlight that you have experience working remotely, and I thought that was really good. You show like significant experience, over 10 years of experience working in WordPress and software development. So you have a wealth of knowledge that you'd be bringing to the table, and it was obvious in your resume, so that was good. And there's like a nice amount of diversity in your work history. It's not just developing this one thing, it's front end, it's back end, you've done testing. So whatever role you put in, you have that ability to empathize with the other teams. Like as a developer, you already have an empathy for the testers because you know what they're going through. So there, I think that's a really good thing to bring to the table. Um, for improvements, your summary is huge. That is a huge summary. And you highlighted so many words in it. Um, Honestly, when I'm looking at a resume, I don't need highlighted words in it. It almost begins to feel condescending if there's like, I can read it, I can pick out what's important. I would move, I would take that, move your skill set up underneath your summary. And then you're highlighting all of those same words in a different way and clean up that skill section. So you had just a list of skills. Um, with your diverse amount of skills, it would be beneficial to do some bullet points and do programming languages and then put your PHP and your JavaScript and your CSS. And your frameworks and tools, WordPress, MySQL, jQuery, and one thing that you didn't add, and we kind of talked about it when we were talking about your extracurriculars, uh, make sure that you add skills for your soft skills, collaboration, flexibility across time zones, your attention to detail, and, use things that can be quantified by your work experience. Like, if you're a tester, you have to have a good attention to detail. So put a few soft skills in there too. Um, and I noted this all out on the document that I'll have Michelle send to you too, so that you'll have all of it written down for you also.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, of course. Um, Work experience after 10 years going back, unless it's something like super life-changing or something that may not be reflected later, I don't pay a lot of attention to previous to 10 years. Um, and if you have a tenure that's less than like a year, put why you left the company. If it was a contract role, just note that it was a contract role. And then when I'm going, it's not a red flag to me anymore. I'm like, oh, that's a contract role. It was expected to be short. Or she was laid off. It was expected or. Um, but yeah, those are pretty much the list of criticisms, not a whole lot of criticisms. Um, do a portfolio. You have over 10 years of experience doing development. I want to see a portfolio more than I want to see a list of domains that you've worked on. So do it, or even just like a GitHub repository where I can look at some of this code that you've done or something just easy to link out. So yeah. Any questions that you had about any of that feedback? I kind of just bled it all
Oh,
out there.
sure. About the portfolio, there have been sites that were when I worked as a contractor for other companies. So it's their portfolio. I'm not sure if I could add add that to my portfolio. So that's the question. Can I do that? Can I add like screenshots of that? This a similar situation happens with code. I'm working with repositories that are not my own. So how do you suggest I work with that?
Yeah, that makes it a little difficult because everybody has their own set of rules about what you can share and what's private, the not compete and privacy use stuff. So really, it would depend on what your agreement with them is. But even if you can't share the code, you can say, this is what I worked on this website, and these are the languages that I've used, and just include it in there in that way. Or like you said, you can do a screenshot of something that you built or designed, a UX that you put together, or and just like a brief explanation about what you did will go miles, even if you can't share the full code to it.
That makes
Because
sense.
nobody's going to be reading through the full code anyway. If you have just a few samples that show how you write and note and organize and everything, it'll go a long way.
Now, I have a question for you, Tatiane. I know that English is not your first language, but you're perfectly fluent in it. But do you find it challenging to interview in English as opposed to in Portuguese?
At this point in my career, no,
Good.
because it's been like several years that I've surrounded myself with English, with podcasts. When I'm watching movies or TV shows, they are in English, and if I can, without any subtitles at all. So I
Good. Yeah.
worked in order to get to a point where English comes as naturally as I can to me,
Good.
both listening and speaking.
Excellent. If somebody uses a word that you haven't heard before in English, how comfortable are you asking them to explain it in a different way?
Oh, that's interesting. I would try to get it by context.
Right.
I would try to open a tab here and check the dictionary.
Oh,
And
good
then
idea.
I would probably then ask, oh, what do you mean by that word? Could you
Yeah.
explain
Yeah.
that?
Because I realized I used the word amenable, which I don't think is that foreign, but a lot of times that's not a natural word that people use a lot. And I was like, you answered perfectly well. So either you already knew the word or you took it from context, but that kind of made me wonder about how you would do that if you didn't know a word like that. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. And that's one of the benefits back then I saw when I developed this strategy to surround myself listening English. That would give me a lot more flexibility to adapt and to understand different words.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent.
This it's a good point to touch on though, Michelle. I do interview a lot of people from all corners of the earth, and some folks struggle a little bit more with English, or they don't struggle with English, but they have very thick accents. So you might encounter that as an interviewee as well, where your interviewer has a very thick accent. And some of the things that I've found that work really well is repeating back what you heard for clarification.
Mhm.
Like, so what you're asking is this, is that correct? And if it's not, then people are usually pretty good about explaining it and taking it down to bite-sized pieces so that you
Mhm.
can find that middle ground. So
It's great feedback. Yeah. Good
um
advice. Excellent.
yeah, what other questions do you have for us? We kind of moved through really quickly this time.
That's awesome, though. Yeah.
Oh, okay, let me. Oh, what do you think about my cover letter? I tried to make a template specifically for WordPress, and then I would review the job requirements, review companies' information, culture, and try to tailor that WordPress template even further to the specific company I'm applying. What would you suggest on for the cover letter as well?
um you didn't submit one to me to review, right? We're just talking about
I
cover letters because I
oh
didn't I didn't think I got one.
I think I uploaded it to you, but maybe I missed it. I'll send it to you right now if I still have it. Hold on. So you can pull it
Okay.
up. But yeah.
So while
Um
the
oh, it's there.
while
If you scroll up in our conversation just a little bit, Nikki, you'll see it in Slack.
Oh, it's in Slack.
Hmm.
I was looking for the link on the stuff that was submitted. So,
Yeah.
while I'm looking for this though, just to touch on cover letters in general, a lot of people aren't even requiring cover letters anymore. And I have to be honest, I don't read cover letters unless it's a very close tie between somebody. I'll mostly just glance over a cover letter. And a lot of times I find that people that do cover letters, they're more harmful to them than they are good because they don't tailor it to the company. So that you tailor it to the company is so important. Um, I had one um, that I remember because it was so out there comparatively speaking, where the guy was like, I'm so excited to work at a marijuana dispensary. And I was like, oh, well, thank you for saving my time. That is not us at all. But,
Wow.
and then,
He forgot to update it for that company, didn't he?
exactly. Yep. But then he went on and to describe, his very intimate knowledge with different strains of marijuana and, all of the different things about growing it and techniques and I was like, you'll have a very good career at a company that specializes in that with that
But
knowledge, but
not
that's not
us.
us.
And I assume you found her resume not or her cover letter.
I did.
Taking a
Do
quick
you
peek
wanna
at
talk
it.
while I peek at it?
Sure, for sure. So I didn't actually give you much feedback on your cover letter when you and I met last week. And for anybody who's listening, WP includes that me is a mentor-mentee opportunity for women in tech to, especially WordPress, to mentor each other. And so that's our relationship is that I'm mentoring you. Um, but I also have never hired somebody in tech, so I didn't want to like look at the cover letter and go, oh, that's good or that's bad or whatever, because I thought, Nikki and Misty would probably have a better opportunity. The one thing that I would have given feedback on, and I'll see if Nikki agrees or disagrees, is it's a very dense cover letter. So you have a lot of information in there and a lot of links to, like, basically you have like a portfolio included in your cover letter as opposed to put on your resume. And I'm going to guess that she's going to suggest you move a lot of that over to the resume or to the resume itself.
When I look at a cover letter, I don't want a rehashing of everything that's in the resume. And you have done a lot of pointing out of previous roles and experience in previous roles. When I'm looking at a cover letter, what I want to know is why your experience is good for the company. I want to see that you looked at the role and you looked at the company, and I want to see you associate your skills with the duties that are posted for the role. So I wouldn't say it's a bad cover letter. The grammar in it is good. It's well formatted. The extra portfolio information, but it's basically a rehashing of your resume, and I'm already reading your resume, so I don't need to necessarily read it in the cover letter also. So,
I'm going to suggest something and see if Nikki agrees or disagrees. If you're going to put something in the cover letter and you've got a lot of links and things to things you've already done, I would say find one of those projects you worked on that you're most proud of, and that that the what you learned and the growth from that project would suit you well to to the position you're applying for. So you'd say, one of my career highlights was XYZ, and what I learned there could work at, your company because of these direct connections.
yep. And the cover letter is a great place to tie some of those I can't speak, I can't say that word.
Hobbies.
Extracurricular skills into your job and show that you're still serious about the job and why those are good, such as
Hmm.
your acting and improv would be good for the role, or DMing and how that is beneficial too, just to bring some of your personality. So basically what you're doing in a cover letter is telling me what you want me to know about who you are. So if you throw a lot of information at me, I'm going to pick out what I see. But if you tell me exactly what you want me to know about you, that's what I'm going to look at. That's what I'm going to know. So sometimes less is more in that case.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Cool.
So
I'm happy. I think that we've got some really good feedback. Tatiane and I will be able to look at some of this in our next one-on-one session, and I'll be able to help you with that. We can continue to refine those things as you're looking for jobs. Do you have any questions as we wrap up today, Tatiane?
Oh, let me see. I think I have um a, a lot of work to do. So I'm at
You're
this
all
point.
set?
I'm really thankful for your insights and suggestions.
Fantastic.
yes, in closing, I would just say you have a wonderful wealth of experience, and you're very well spoken and you write very clearly. And these are all wonderful things. Don't be afraid to tell us about it. Don't be afraid to talk about specific languages that you've used. Don't be afraid to, you know, get into some of those more granular details. So, when I'm asking about your process for developing a plugin, don't be afraid to say, I used JavaScript to do this because I like, this framework, whatever. Don't be afraid to show who you are and what you know, um, because you have a lot there to share, you know, confidence.
Yeah, I will certainly work on that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
I think a lot of this feedback is good for all of our listeners. I think that's that's the purpose of this show is the things that we critique, positive and things that could use some work, let's say, are things that everybody who's listening could take into account for the way they interview and the way they write their resume. So thank you for the vulnerability to share that today and not only help yourself, but help others along the way. Nikki, I'll let you bring
Yeah.
it home.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time and your vulnerability, as Michelle said. And thank you so much for being here. Hopefully, like Michelle already stated, she pretty much brought it home already. Um, you know, we really just want to help people have the best chance to get jobs out there. So if you do have questions that you want to ask and you don't want to be on the show, don't be afraid to reach out. For that either, I'm happy to answer questions, or if you come back and go, hey, I don't understand this feedback, or I changed this and I want to see what you think, let me know. I'm happy to take another look and help out. I really want people to have the best chance to put their best foot forward. So, thank you for helping me bring that to people.
And thanks for having me as a guest
Great.
host today,
That's so
Nikki.
lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for stepping in for Misty. I appreciate it.
My
um
pleasure.
so
All right.
have a
We'll
wonderful
see.
day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
We'll see everybody in the next episode. Bye. The Get Hired podcast is a post status production in partnership with Liquid Web, sponsored by Omnisend.